April 10, 1992. Howard Stern is live on KROQ, doing his usual Friday morning show when the hotline rings. The hotline never rings unless something massive has happened. Howard picks up. The voice on the other end says 3 words. Sam is dead. Howard freezes. His face goes white. 5 million listeners hear Howard Stern whisper into the microphone, "No, that can't be right." What happens in the next 90 minutes will become the most heartbreaking broadcast in radio history. Sam Kinison wasn't just Howard's friend. He was Howard's brother. They met in 1985 when Sam was still an unknown screaming maniac, doing sets at the Comedy Store in Los Angeles. Howard brought Sam on the show, and within minutes they connected in a way that was almost supernatural. They both came from nothing. They both had rage buried so deep it could only come out through performance. They both understood that comedy wasn't about making people comfortable. It was about making them feel something real. Sam became a regular on Howard's show, and those appearances were legendary. Sam would come in screaming about relationships, about religion, about everything polite society refused to discuss. Howard would egg him on, push him further, and together they created radio that was so raw, so unfiltered that listeners either loved them or wanted them off the air. But off the air, Howard and Sam talked about their demons. Sam's childhood abuse. Howard's desperate need for approval. Sam's addiction to drugs and alcohol. Howard's crippling insecurity. They understood each other in a way nobody else could. They were both broken men using comedy as armor. In early 1992, Sam Kinison was at the peak of his career. His HBO specials were massive hits. He was selling out arenas. He'd just gotten married to Malika Sawiri in Las Vegas. Sam called Howard the day after the wedding, drunk and happy, screaming about how he'd finally found the one, how his life was perfect. Howard made jokes about how long the marriage would last. Sam laughed and said, "You'll see, Howard, I'm going to prove everyone wrong." That was the last real conversation they had. On April 10th, Sam and Malika were driving from Los Angeles to Laughlin, Nevada, where Sam had a show that night. They were in Sam's Pontiac Trans Am, the car he loved. It was a beautiful spring day. Clear skies. Light traffic. Sam was in a good mood, laughing with Malika, talking about the show. At approximately 1:15 p.m., as they drove on U.S. Route 95 near Needles, California, a pickup truck driven by a 17-year-old kid named Troy Pearson crossed the center line. Troy was drunk. The truck smashed head-on into Sam's Trans Am at full speed. The impact was devastating. Malika was seriously injured but alive. And Sam, the wildest, loudest, most fearless comedian in America, was dying on the side of a desert highway. But here's what almost nobody knows. Sam didn't die instantly. He was conscious for several minutes after the crash. Witnesses said Sam was talking, not screaming, not panicking, just talking calmly like he was having a conversation with someone they couldn't see. One witness, a truck driver who stopped to help, said Sam kept saying, "I don't want to go, I don't want to go." And then suddenly his expression changed and he said, "Okay, okay, okay." Then he took one last breath and he was gone. The truck driver swore Sam was talking to someone invisible, that whatever Sam saw in those final moments changed his fear into acceptance. Back in New York, Howard was in the middle of his show doing a bit about something meaningless when the hotline rang. Gary Delabate answered it in the office. The voice on the other end was from Sam's management. "Gary," they said, "Sam Kinison was in a car accident. He's dead." Gary dropped the phone. He walked to the studio door, his hands shaking. He opened it, and Howard looked over, annoyed. "What, Gary?" Howard snapped. Gary couldn't speak. He walked to Howard's desk and leaned down close. The microphone picked it up anyway. "Sam's been in an accident, Howard." "He's gone." Howard's reaction was instant. "No," he said loudly. No, that's not true. Robin Quivers felt her stomach drop. What happened? Robin asked. Howard looked at her, his eyes filling with tears. Sam's dead, Howard said. Robin gasped. Fred Norris stopped what he was doing. Jackie Martling sat frozen. The studio went completely silent. 5 million people were listening to nothing, just the sound of Howard Stern trying to process the impossible. Howard grabbed the phone and started dialing. He called Sam's management, his publicist, anyone who might tell him it was a mistake. But every call confirmed it. Sam Kinison was dead, killed in a head-on collision in the California desert. Howard hung up and put his head in his hands. The show was still live. America was hearing Howard Stern fall apart in real time. I just talked to him, Howard said, his voice breaking. I just talked to him a week ago. He was happy. He was supposed to come on the show next month. Robin had tears streaming down her face. Howard, I'm so sorry. Howard looked at the microphone, his face a mask of grief and rage. He's dead because some drunk kid crossed into his lane, Howard said, his voice rising. Sam survived everything. The drugs, the alcohol, the heart attacks. He survived all of it, and he gets killed by some stupid drunk teenager. The bitterness in Howard's voice was cutting. This wasn't performance. This was raw fury at the unfairness of it all. Gary stood nearby, unsure what to do. Should we go to commercial? Gary asked quietly. No, Howard snapped. I need to talk about this. And then his voice cracked completely, and he started crying on air. Not quiet tears. Loud, gasping sobs that echoed through the studio and into millions of homes. Robin reached across and grabbed Howard's hand. It's okay, Howard. Let it out. But Howard couldn't stop. He cried for minutes, live on air, while his crew sat helpless and his audience listened in shocked silence. When Howard finally composed himself, what came out was the most honest eulogy anyone had ever heard. Sam Kinison was my best friend, Howard said, his voice thick. People don't understand that. They think we were just work friends. But Sam was the only person who really got me. He understood what it's like to be hated for telling the truth. We talked about everything. Our childhoods, our fears, our anger. Sam had more pain inside him than anyone I've ever known, and he turned it into something beautiful. He made people laugh by screaming the things they were too afraid to say. That's genius. And now he's gone, and I don't know how to process that. Robin spoke gently. Howard, maybe you should take the day off. Come back Monday. Howard shook his head violently. No, I need to be here. I need to talk about Sam. If I don't do it now, all anyone will remember is the screaming preacher comedian. They won't remember the real Sam. So Howard started telling stories. He told the audience about the first time Sam came on the show in 1986. How Sam walked in looking like a madman with his wild hair and leather jacket. How he started ranting about his ex-wife, and within seconds, everyone was crying from laughing. He told them about the time Sam called at 3 a.m, high out of his mind, convinced he was going to die. And Howard talked him down, stayed on the phone for 2 hours until Sam fell asleep. He told them about Sam's kindness, how he'd give money to homeless people, how he'd spend hours with fans after shows, how despite the rage on stage, Sam was gentle and broken and desperately trying to be loved. With every story, Howard's voice got stronger. The grief was still there, but now it was mixed with pride. The need to make sure the world knew who Sam really was. And then Howard said something that stunned everyone. I failed him, Howard said quietly. The studio went silent. What do you mean? Robin asked. Howard looked at the microphone. Sam was struggling. The drugs, the drinking, it was getting worse. And I knew, I saw it, but I didn't do enough. I made jokes about it on air. I enabled it because it made for good radio. And now he's dead, and I have to live with that. Maybe if I'd been a better friend, if I'd pushed him to get help instead of laughing at his chaos, maybe he'd still be alive. Robin interrupted. Howard, you can't do this to yourself. Sam made his own choices. I know, Howard said, but I could have tried harder. I could have been there for him. Instead, I used our friendship for content, and now I don't get to fix that. I don't get to tell him I should have done better. The confession was devastating. Howard Stern admitting on live radio that he'd failed his best friend. Millions heard it and understood that beneath the shock jock bravado was someone consumed by guilt. The rest of the show was unlike anything Howard had ever done. No bits, no jokes, no calls. Just Howard and Robin and Fred talking about Sam, playing clips from his old appearances, remembering the moments that made them laugh and cry. It was a 2-hour memorial in real time, unscripted and raw. Near the end, Howard played one final clip. It was from Sam's last appearance, just 3 weeks earlier. In the clip, Sam was talking about his marriage, how happy he was. And at the end, Sam said something nobody had thought much about. He said, Howard, you're my brother, man. Whatever happens, I want you to know you saved my life by believing in me when nobody else did. Howard stopped the tape and sat in silence. Then he spoke into the microphone, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Sam, I don't know if you can hear me, but I need you to know something. You saved my life too. You showed me it was okay to be angry, to be broken, to be real. You made me a better broadcaster and a better person. And I'm sorry I didn't tell you that enough. I'm sorry I didn't do more. I love you, brother. Rest in peace. The show ended. Howard walked out without speaking to anyone. He got in his car and drove home in complete silence. When he got there, he locked himself in his room and didn't come out for hours. His wife Allison tried to comfort him, but Howard was unreachable. He was drowning in grief and guilt. The funeral was held on April 15th in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Thousands attended. Howard flew out with Robin and Gary. When Howard saw Sam's casket, he broke down again. He stood there sobbing while Robin held him up. During the service, several people spoke about Sam's impact on comedy. But it was Howard's eulogy that left everyone in tears. He walked to the podium and for a moment couldn't speak. Then he looked at the crowd and said, Sam Kinison was the most honest person I ever met. He never lied about who he was. He never pretended to be anything other than a broken, angry, brilliant man trying to make sense of a world that hurt him. And he did it by making people laugh. That's a gift. Sam, wherever you are, I hope you're at peace. I hope you're not screaming anymore. I hope you found the love you were always looking for. And I promise you, I will never let people forget who you were. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for showing me what real courage looks like. Howard walked back to his seat and sat down next to Robin. She took his hand and they sat there together, mourning someone irreplaceable. After the funeral, Howard returned to New York, but something had changed. The guilt consumed him. He talked about it constantly on air, replaying their conversations, second-guessing every decision, wondering if he could have saved his friend. Months passed. Howard kept working, but the joy was gone. Robin noticed. Gary noticed. Everyone noticed. Howard was going through the motions, but his heart wasn't in it. Then in July, 3 months after Sam's death, Howard got a call from Carl Above, one of Sam's closest friends. Carl had been at the crash site. He'd talked to the witnesses. And he wanted Howard to know what Sam's last words really were. Howard, Carl said, Sam didn't die in pain. He didn't die afraid. The people who were there, they all said Sam was talking to someone. He was calm. He said, I don't want to go. And then he paused like he was listening. And then he said, okay. Like he'd accepted something. Like someone told him it was going to be okay. Howard listened and felt something shift. The guilt didn't disappear, but it loosened slightly. The idea that Sam had found peace in his final moments, that he'd let go of his fear, that gave Howard something he desperately needed. Hope. Years later, Howard would talk about Sam's death as the moment that changed him forever. He'd say it was when he realized that life is too short for fake friendships, for surface connections, for pretending. Sam's death taught Howard to be more honest, more vulnerable, more willing to tell people they mattered. In his book Miss America, Howard wrote an entire chapter about Sam. He wrote, "Sam Kinison died on April 10, 1992, but part of me died with him that day. The part that thought friendship was about fun and chaos and great radio. Sam taught me that real friendship is about seeing someone's darkness and loving them anyway. He taught me that the people who understand your pain are rare and precious. And when you lose them, you don't get over it. You just learn to live with the hole they left behind. I miss him every day. I miss his voice. I miss his laugh. I miss the way he'd call me at 2 in the morning just to talk. I miss my brother." That chapter devastated readers because it was so raw, so honest, so completely stripped of Howard's usual defenses. People wrote letters to Howard saying they'd cried reading it, that it made them call old friends they'd lost touch with, that it reminded them how fragile life really is. But for Howard, writing it wasn't cathartic. It was necessary. It was the only way he knew how to process grief that had no resolution, no closure, no happy ending. In 2006, when Howard moved his show to Sirius satellite radio, one of the first things he did was create a special tribute to Sam. He played hours of Sam's best moments on the show. He brought on comedians who'd known Sam to share their stories. He talked openly about the guilt he still carried, the conversations they never had, the help he never offered. And he played that final clip again, the one where Sam called him his brother. Listeners who'd been with Howard since the K-Rock days remembered that April morning in 1992. They remembered hearing Howard break down live on air. And now, 14 years later, they heard him break down again. Because some wounds don't heal. They just become part of who you are. In more recent years, Howard has become even more open about mental health, about therapy, about the importance of telling people you love them before it's too late. And in almost every conversation about those topics, Sam's name comes up. Howard will say, "I lost my best friend because neither of us knew how to ask for help. We were both too proud, too damaged, too afraid of being vulnerable. And that cost me someone I can never replace." That honesty, that willingness to admit failure and regret, has made Howard's show deeper and more meaningful than it was in the early days. But it came at a cost. The cost was Sam Kinison. On April 10, 2022, the 30th anniversary of Sam's death, Howard did something he'd never done before. He dedicated the entire show to Sam. No guests, no bits, no calls. Just Howard and Robin talking about their friend. Howard played clips from Sam's appearances. He told stories he'd never shared publicly. And at the end of the show, Howard looked into the camera, something he rarely does on his Sirius show, and he spoke directly to Sam. "Sam, wherever you are, I hope you know how much you meant to me. I hope you know that not a day goes by that I don't think about you. I hope you found the peace you were looking for. And I really hope, that when my time comes, you'll be there waiting. Because I still have so much to tell you. I still have so many apologies to make. I love you, brother. Always have, always will." The studio was completely silent when he finished. Robin was crying. Gary was crying. Even the crew behind the cameras had tears in their eyes. It was the most vulnerable Howard Stern had ever been on air. And it was all for Sam, because that's what real friendship is. It's loving someone so much that even 30 years after they're gone, the pain is still fresh. It's carrying their memory with you every single day. It's never forgetting the sound of their voice or the way They made you laugh were the moments when they saw through all your bullshit and loved you anyway. There's audio from that April morning in 1992 that still circulates among old-school Stern fans. It's not the full 2 hours, just clips. But you can hear it all. You can hear the moment Gary tells Howard that Sam is dead. You can hear Howard's voice break. You can hear him sob uncontrollably. You can hear him eulogize his best friend with a rawness that's almost unbearable to listen to. And if you listen very closely, underneath all the grief and the guilt and the regret, you can hear something else. You can hear love. Pure, unfiltered, unconditional love between two broken men who found each other in the chaos and held on as tight as they could. That's the coolest part of the story. Not that Sam Kinison died. Death comes for everyone eventually. The cruelest part is that Howard never got to save his friend. He never got to have the conversation where he said, "Sam, you need help and I'm going to make sure you get it." He never got to be the friend Sam needed in that moment. And that regret, that knowledge that he could have done more and didn't, has haunted Howard Stern every single day for over 30 years. Howard once said in a therapy session that he recorded for his show, "The thing about losing Sam is that I can't fix it. I can't go back and be a better friend. I can't undo the jokes I made about his addiction. I can't make him get sober. I can't save him from that drunk driver. All I can do is carry the weight of knowing I failed him when he needed me most. And some days, that weight is so heavy I can barely breathe." That admission, that level of honesty about his own failures, is why Howard's show evolved from shock jock entertainment into something deeper. Because Sam's death forced Howard to confront the parts of himself he'd spent decades hiding. The fear, the insecurity, the desperate need to be loved, the inability to be vulnerable. Sam had seen all of that and loved him anyway. And when Sam died, Howard lost the only person who truly understood him. In the end. That's what the story of Howard Stern and Sam Kinison is really about. It's not about comedy or radio or fame. It's about two damaged souls who found each other and created something beautiful together. It's about a friendship so deep that when one of them died, the other one spent the rest of his life trying to make sense of the loss. It's about the guilt we carry when we lose someone we love and the desperate wish that we'd done things differently. Howard Stern found out Sam Kinison was dead on April 10, 1992, live on air in front of 5 million listeners. And in the 30-plus years since that day, Howard has spent countless hours talking about Sam, remembering him, honoring him, and trying to forgive himself for not saving him. Because that's what real love looks like. It's not perfect. It's not always enough. But it's real. And it lasts forever, even when the person you love is gone. Sam Kinison died on a desert highway at 38 years old. But his spirit, his voice, his impact on Howard Stern, that lives on. Every time Howard tells a story about Sam, every time he plays an old clip, every time he admits his failures and his regrets, that's Sam, still teaching Howard how to be honest, still showing him what it means to be fearless, still being his brother even from beyond the grave. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough.